Law number 15 is the law of victory. And the law of victory says leaders find a way for the team to win. In other words, leaders have the ability to bring victory to the people. In your notes, I have this statement: victorious leaders find the alternative to winning unacceptable. So they find out what needs to be done to achieve victory. And then they go after it with everything at their disposal. Now, if you'll let me just use a sports illustration just for a second, the classic example of somebody that understood the law of victory was Michael Jordan. He just had the ability to bring the team to victory. And even when he went over to the Washington team in the NBA, a team that had been lowly, they almost made the playoffs. Why? Because anything less than victory is unacceptable to Michael Jordan. You show me a person, a leader that does this law well, and I'll show you a person that absolutely hates losing. As I've looked at the great leaders in history, they all excelled in this law. Whether it's in our country, George Washington, who absolutely is determined to allow our country to be free from British rule, and stakes his life in 6 years, never hardly goes home to stay out there with his soldiers as they are undermanned and underrated to make sure that they bring this victory home, and finally he does. Whether it's a George Washington or an Abraham Lincoln who knows that the bloodiest time in our history is going to be a civil war, but he's willing to go through those dark hours so that we can eventually take this injustice off of our African American and friends and bring us to a new day. All of the great leaders understand and bring forth the law of victory. Perhaps my favorite leader of all is the leader of England, Winston Churchill, during World War II, who absolutely refused to allow the Nazis to gain control of Europe. And in the darkest hours spoke great words of victory to his people. I love the statement I have in your notes about him. Winston Churchill asked the question, what is our aim? I answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs, victory in spite of all terror, victory however long and hard the road may be, for without victory there is no survival. So, what does the law of victory look like? Let's put a picture on it so we can understand it. Let's make the law of victory tangible. First of all, leadership is responsible. You show me a leader that brings his or her team to victory, and I'll show you a leader that takes responsibility. They take responsibility when defeat happens. They say, look, it was my problem, I was the leader. So the first part or component of the law of victory in leadership is that the leader takes responsibility. No excuses. Boy, don't you know some people? Every time there's a problem, they got 17 reasons why it's not them. Huh? If and but and if and but. If ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. The other day, I love this. I picked this up. This is just some true explanations why people had automobile accidents, as reported to the police when they were doing the report. And some of these excuses just cracked me up. Such as this person said, as I reached an intersection, a hedge sprang up. Hedges will do that often, obscuring my vision. Wasn't my fault. The hedge grew fast. An invisible car came out of nowhere, struck my car and vanished. The telephone pole was approaching fast. Those moving telephone poles do it every time. I attempted to swerve out of its path when it struck my front end. I hate it when telephone poles do that. The indirect cause of this accident was a little guy in a small car with a big mouth. I had been driving my car for 4 years when I fell asleep at the wheel and had an accident. After 4 years, you'll do that. I was on my way to the doctor's with rear end trouble when my universal joint gave way, causing me to have an accident. To avoid hitting the bumper of the car in front, I struck the pedestrian. Makes perfect sense to me. I was coming home, pulled into the wrong driveway, and hit a tree that I did not have. The pedestrian had no idea which direction to run, so I ran over him. Make up your mind. Make up your mind. The guy was all over the road, and I had to swerve a number of times before hitting him. This was not easy. This was not an easy deal. I pulled away at the side of the road, glanced at my mother-in-law, and headed over the embankment. That's probably the only one that wasn't an excuse. Now, it's just simple. The law of victory says, very simple, leaders take responsibility. Own up. The second thing the law of victory looks like is losing is unacceptable. Losing is just not acceptable. Thirdly, passion is unquenchable. You show me a person in the law of victory, and I'll show you a person that is passionate about winning. Creativity is essential. Why? Because you're going to have to constantly be creative to work yourself out of messes to bring victory. Victory is not an escalator to the top. Quitting is unthinkable. They will not quit. Commitment is unquestionable. And because of those preceding things, victory is inevitable. That's just a fact. I'm very fortunate because I have people around me who understand this law very well. And in my inner circle, they really do understand the law of victory. David Sutherland, who's the president of Enjoy Stewardship Services, that's an organization that raises money for nonprofit organizations. David, I many times go to him and I say, David, of all the people I know, you are Mr. Law of Victory. You don't allow my team to lose. You don't allow my company to lose. You're going to make it happen. And I knew he was the law of victory when I brought him into my organization. It was very, very small. And it was right after Thanksgiving. I was over at the office one day and I saw his wife, Roxine, and I noticed Dave was gone. And I said, Roxine, where's Dave? Well, he said, John, his goal was X amount of contracts this year, and he's 7 contracts short. So on Thanksgiving Day, he left and said, I hope to be home for Christmas. But I won't be home till I have the other 7 contracts. So Roxine said, I'm not sure when he'll be home. But when he comes home, he'll have the contracts. He came home 2 days before Christmas. All 7 of them signed. You see, Dave's a leader that isn't going to allow the team to lose. He just is not going to allow the team to lose. Kevin Small, who's the president of Enjoy, we got ready to put together a major leadership simulcast all over America with some of the major players such as Jack Welch and Rudy Giuliani and that whole process. And I can remember the day that Kevin came to us and said, I want to do this simulcast. And my brother and I looked at him and said, well, it's going to take a lot of money and we're going to have to probably have a cash flow issue. And the only way we're going to let you do that is if you go out. And we threw out, we said, you're just going to have to get leaders like Jack Welch or Rudy Giuliani for us to do this simulcast because you're just going to have to make it so great that everybody's going to want to watch it. And he disappeared. And I went to his assistant. I said, where's Kevin? She said, he went after Jack Welch and Rudy Giuliani. Said he would be back when he had him. 8 days later, he came back with signed contracts. Jack Welch, Rudy Giuliani, and an all-star team of lineup. You see, Kevin understands. He understands the law of victory. It's just a very simple law. It's a law that basically says, if you're a leader, you realize your responsibility isn't to get across the line first. Your responsibility is to take everybody that's on your team across the line. You see, The law of victory is not an individual award. The law of victory is not an individual trophy. It basically says because you got across the line and helped everybody else get across the line, you took everybody on your team to a higher level. The law of victory says, yes, you won, but so did all the players around you. The law of victory can probably be expressed best in the words of Bill Russell, who said after every basketball game with the Boston Celtics, which he led to many world championships, he said, after every game, I evaluate my game not based on how well I played. I evaluate my game on how well the players around me played, because he said my main job is to make them all just a little bit better. So the law of victory is not a single award for a single person doing a single job. No, no, no. You see, you're a leader. And leaders don't go to the top by themselves. Oh, they go to the top. But when they go to the top, they're like my friend Jim Winokur, who took 20 people to the top of Mount Everest. He said, the greatest joy is not getting there myself. Once I did it, I knew I could do it. Now the question is, can I bring victory to everybody else? That's the law of victory.